Hello, and welcome to episode 32 of the Brain Cancer Podcast. In this episode, I just want to talk about some of the things that we have to go through before surgery, as well as some of the care that we have to do after we come home from the hospital. Just a quick update on me, though. I'm feeling pretty good. Everything is going well. We're enjoying the summer now over here in Boston. The weather has been pretty good so far. The garden is planted and growing. I will definitely be updating you all on that, both on the podcast as well as on our Facebook page. So I have been in both the situations where I didn't have time to prepare for surgery. My second surgery, I definitely had a few weeks to prepare for it. It was also in 2021 when we were still going through our pandemic times. So there were a few additional steps that I had to do, which may not be required now or possibly any other time in the future. Hopefully, we don't have to go back to this in the future. If you have been diagnosed and you do have time to prepare for your surgery, obviously your doctor will give you a list of things to do, to not do, but I just kind of want to share what I did, as well as kind of just run through the same list that you might lose, like I did. Depending on how they found your tumor, they may order another pre-op MRI, maybe a week or so before you actually go in for your surgery. They will also have you get a few blood draws done so that they can measure all of your levels and be able to follow up with those blood results after surgery and as you recover from your surgery and going through treatment. You should also stop drinking any alcohol about a week or two before, because that can cause complications both during or post surgery. You should also stop using any sort of tobacco products. Also, if you already have brain cancer, you probably should not be smoking or chewing anyways. I don't think any of us want more cancer on top of the cancer that we already have. But if you do, and you do need help, many hospitals will provide you some sort of nicotine patches or something like Wellbutrin to help at least get you through the surgery. By the time you're done with your surgery, you should be good to just stop anyways, because your lungs will thank you. I promise you that. Also, definitely stop taking any sort of aspirin or NSAIDs, as they are blood thinners. You definitely don't want to have any of that in your system when you are going through surgery, because you're already going to be losing a fair amount of blood, and some patients may even need to have a blood transfusion. The doctor might tell you to not eat after a certain time. I think for me, because I had an 8 a.m. surgery, they told me not to drink anything or eat anything after 8 o'clock. The only thing I did was I took my meds with some water, and then the morning of, I had a few sips of water because I was so thirsty, and I really don't think a small amount of water was really going to affect anything. They will definitely shave the part of your head they will be cutting into. So you do have the option if you wanted to pre-shave your head, but if you don't want to, you certainly don't have to. Possibly on that same morning, you'll have to fill out a piece of paper or a medical healthcare proxy, so that should something bad happen, you will have somebody that can follow both your healthcare wishes and what you don't want to happen. You may want to put down your spouse or family member, somebody that you know will make the decisions that you want and you trust them. If you have any family who are waiting for you at the hospital, the staff will constantly provide you updates. Well, not you, but your family. They will give you updates throughout the surgery. Or they can call the person if you don't want to wait at the hospital for 7 or 8 hours. Once you get checked in, though, you will have to get changed into some hospital gown things and put your stuff inside of one of those plastic bags that will get locked up and taken care of. I'm sure that they could also just give them to your family member if they're there. For me personally, I went by myself and they just put my stuff in some sort of locker and brought it to me right as they woke me up when I was back in the ICU. The second time around, I was much more chatty with the nurses, and I definitely think that they will remember me for a while. I have a very distinct personality and a sense of humor, and I actually felt great going in for my second surgery. Obviously, I was a little bit nervous, but I certainly didn't actually feel it when I was there because I was just talking with everybody and making some jokes. Because I don't think they get too many patients that are quite like me. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's just how I am. They will put an IV in for you, which they did for me. And then eventually they put me on a movable hospital bed. And they took me back into the area where you get your pre-op meds before they put you to sleep. I remember talking to the doctor and making some jokes with him. And I remember that he had asked me something. Oh, it was he told me to start counting down from 100 when he had started to give me the anesthesia. And then I remember asking him if I should start at 100 or start at 99. He said, "It's totally up to you." And by that point, I think I was already out. And the next thing I know, I was waking back up in the ICU. The first surgery that I went through, once they brought me back to the room in the ICU, they immediately made me stand up, walk in a circle, just so that they knew that I could still walk and talk and move my fingers and all of those vital things. Asked me a couple of very simple questions, and then I was allowed to go back to sleep because I had just woken up from my first craniotomy and I was a little tired. They may ask you to do a few things like that, like take a few steps to turn yourself around and a simple neurological exam. They will have multiple IVs inside of your arms, most likely both arms. One of them will be hooked up to a way to deliver pain medication to you. Each patient will be different. Some people respond better to different types of painkillers. For my first surgery, it was definitely more of a headache, and the pain lasted quite a bit longer. And I don't remember other than Dilaudid and I think morphine that they gave me. However, after my second surgery, the IV morphine didn't really seem to do anything, but my headache wasn't nearly as intense as it was the first time. Obviously, I still had a headache, but I only rated it at maybe a 6. They did do IV morphine and the Dilaudid, but that didn't really seem to do as much. But when I took 2 Tylenols and 2 5 milligram oxycodones every 6 hours, by the time I left the next morning, I felt great again. I didn't have a headache, and I actually didn't need to use any of the extra oxycodones that they prescribed me to pick up from the pharmacy the next day. But that could be different for each person. My second surgery, it was really the Tylenol and the small amount of oxycodone that really helped control the pain, and I only needed that overnight until I went home the next day. Now I barely ever have to take any Tylenol because I don't really get headaches anymore, which I am so thankful for and I feel so lucky for. The other surprise that you might find when you wake up is what's known as an arterial line. It is exactly like it sounds. It is hooked up to your artery because that gives a more exact measurement of your pulse and your blood pressure. This is a huge needle. It may have a board attached to it. The board only serves to keep your hand in a stable position. It doesn't really do anything other than that. My first surgery, because I was in the hospital longer, I had it in for a few days. And then even when I got home, A couple days had already passed, and I had a dream at night where I could feel that arterial line was still in there. In my dreams, I could feel it, that it was still there. Even though it wasn't, it still felt exactly like it did at the hospital. My second surgery, they took that out early the next morning because I was actually trying to eat a piece of fruit and because I couldn't really move my hand, my left hand with the arterial line in it. They just took it out for me anyways because I was going to be leaving soon. And that one, they will have to put a lot of pressure on it. It might take upwards of 5 minutes of pressure to fully stop the bleeding on that. Thankfully, they put that one in when we're asleep because I would not want to be awake for that one. I have no problems with IVs now, but that one, no way, not a chance. Depending on your condition, you may also have some EKG pads stuck to your chest, as well as the leggings, which are, they vibrate and it feels kind of weird, but they're meant to prevent any blood clots from forming in your legs because you're lying down in a bed for days and you don't want to have any blood clots develop. So it's constantly moving the blood around in your legs and they feel really weird. And I actually didn't really use them the second time. They had them on when I woke up, and then I just asked them to remove them later that night because I didn't really need them at all. You'll also have a separate IV that will just be giving you more IV fluids, and medications will both come through the same line as opposed to having multiple IVs going all at the same time. Oh, and I almost forgot the one that really surprised me the first time around, and that was the catheter. Whew. I woke up, I was like, what is going on here? What is this? Needless to say, I had never had a catheter in before, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit. I didn't really know what was going on. Thankfully, they took that out pretty quickly after I'd actually woken up and was a lot more coherent. I remember the nurse came in and asked if we wanted to remove that, and I said yes, please, and quickly. My second surgery, when I was talking to the nurses before I'd actually gone in, one of the things I was telling them about was my catheter experience from the first surgery. And I asked them if they could please remove that before I had actually woken up, and I would really, really appreciate that. Thankfully, they did, and I made sure to tell them thank you. Every person might be in the hospital for a different amount of days. My first surgery was a Monday morning surgery where I was back home by Wednesday afternoon. My second surgery was much faster, and I was back home by the following morning. Before you can go home, you will have to do some amount of physical activity as well as possibly occupational therapy, which was for me just going into a unfamiliar environment, which was a kitchen that they had set up, and I just had to make instant coffee and some instant tea. I did not have to do this after my second surgery because I felt completely fine and I passed all of their neurological exams. As you get prepped to go home, they will take one or more sets of vitals, a little bit more blood work, and they will give you a sheet of what to do and what not to do, broken down by weeks for your recovery. I don't have my actual paper still with me here in front of me. It might be in my medical files book with all of my various hospital paperwork, but it's going to be pretty much the same for everybody. They will recommend that you not shower for 72 hours, and you definitely don't want to get your staples or your incision site wet immediately. Just to get the hospital ick off of me, I actually just got a bath and just obviously didn't get my head wet. And I just washed my face and shaved, but I didn't wash my hair for a few days. And then a few days later, I had just run some water down, especially the back of it, and being very careful around my incision site. And if it does get a little bit wet, you can just tap it down very, very gently with a soft towel. Whether you have staples or stitches, you're going to want to keep the incision site clean. If you notice any sort of redness or drainage, or if there's a clear liquid that you notice coming out of your site, immediately call your doctors because it could be brain fluid. There will be some amount of crusting, I guess, as your incision site heals, and you have to be very, very careful with how you clean it as the days go by. Don't put any scar medication on there because it can cause an infection. They will tell you that, and make sure that you listen to them. If you have a headache that doesn't get any better with your pain meds, or you have a high fever, make sure that you call your doctor or the hospital. You will most likely also be on dexamethasone, which will help control any sort of brain swelling. And that should be tapered as quickly and safely as possible so that you don't build a tolerance to it and it starts to shut your adrenal glands down. Dexamethasone is no fun. When it comes to sleeping, I slept in a corner with a bunch of pillows to prop my head up because I didn't want to lie flat back anyways. So you're going to want to have your head still elevated somewhat with at least one pillow, possibly more, but however it is comfortable for you, and that your head will still be elevated for at least a few more days. Also, on that paper will be weight limits. You have to be very, very careful. Don't bend over. If you have to go down for any reason, try and like squat. Don't pick up anything heavier than 5 pounds. You simply don't want to put any sort of stress or strain and cause your stitches to pull out, your staples to come out, and that will tear your incision site, and that can lead to further infections, as well as having to go back to the hospital to maybe get more staples, more stitches, whatever they would have to do. So you just want to be careful and watch what you pick up, how you pick up anything, and don't put too much strain on your body for at least a couple weeks. I immediately wanted to get up and get walking. My goal was to walk a little bit further each time I went out because not only was I getting fresh air, I was also getting some exercise and getting movement in. This is obviously a very personal type of activity, and don't press yourself into doing something that you're not up for right now. Don't stress yourself. You're recovering from brain surgery. Likewise, don't feel bad if you have to take multiple naps during the day. Your body is expending a lot more energy right now trying to heal your brain and your body, and you will be tired and fatigued. Make sure that you are eating too, because we do get our energy from food and from the sun. Hence why I also wanted to get outside. Like I said, make sure that you still continue to avoid any sort of alcohol for at least another few weeks, because that will also thin out your blood and could prevent your blood from clotting if something were to happen. Alcohol is a blood thinner, and it could cause issues if something were to happen, as well as just being pretty bad, as well as having really bad interactions with painkillers you might be on. You don't want to mix alcohol and painkillers because it kills many, many people. Some of the meds will give you, or could give you, constipation, so make sure you have a stool softener on hand should you need it. Make sure you drink plenty of water and try and eat fiber if you can. If you do have a paper with your weekly outlines, you'll notice things do get better, and that each week you'll be able to physically and mentally do a little bit more. As you're recovering, your tumor will be sent out for pathology. You will also have your appointment scheduled to remove your staples or your stitches, whatever you might have, as well as multiple meetings with your doctor and the team to determine your next steps in your journey. Hospitals have a tumor board, so once they get the pathology back, they will have a meeting with the heads of various departments. They look at all of the new cases that have come across the hospital over the past week, and they work together as a unit to determine the best course of treatment for you specifically based on your pathology. It may involve the standard of care, a clinical trial, or some sort of combination. I personally, the first time, did radiation plus a clinical trial. And then after my second surgery, I did 6 cycles of Temodar. It does seem like a lot when we are preparing for our surgery. We have to have blood work done. I had to have a COVID test 3 days before. You have to have an MRI. And many of the other pre-op things are pretty standard, such as avoiding food after midnight or 9 p.m., whatever they tell you, going all the way through your arrival, getting checked in, getting changed, getting wheeled all over the hospital, getting hooked up to your IV. And the next thing you know, you're going under, you're waking up, and you're back in your ICU. It is the same for the recovery afterwards. We're going to have IVs and arterial lines put in, and each patient will have different needs, but we will all have vitals taken, IVs put in, fluids given to us, pain management, as well as a little bit of neurological exams. You'll be walking around the hospital floor, going up some stairs, down some stairs, and showing that you are good to go home. Once we get home, it's just managing our incision site, not pushing ourselves too hard, and taking the time that we need to recover while the hospital is getting our pathology done and determining the next steps of our treatment. I just wanted to talk about my personal experience after having a couple surgeries, hopefully no more, or at least for a long time. And I just wanted to share some of my thoughts on how it is for me, as well as some of the commonalities that exist for all of us. I hope I did a good job, and I think I'm going to wrap it up right about here. Thank you all so much for taking the time to tune in. It really means a lot to me that I can be of some help to some people all around the world. If you would like, follow the page on Facebook at facebook.com/braincancerpodcast. Give me a follow on Twitter at twitter.com/braincancerpod. Send me an email at braincancerpodcast@gmail.com. You can email me anytime with comments, concerns, questions. If you want to be on the show, we can arrange that as well. This is a show for all of us. I take care of all of the recording on my end, so you don't actually have to do anything. Be sure to give the podcast a review on our Facebook page, which I had mentioned earlier, facebook.com/braincancerpodcast. You can leave a review there. You can follow the page on whatever podcast app you use, whether it's iTunes, Podbean, Amazon, Spotify, and make sure you like it as well, if you can, on whatever app you use. I will be back soon with our June news recap, as we still have another week left in June. So once we're finished there, we will take a look back and read about and talk about some of the new developments in the brain cancer world. Once again, thank you so much. I hope you all have a great day or night, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.